Hello there. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are. We're coming to you live from our studios here in Kokomlimle. Our digital address GA0992539. Top stories this hour. NDC's COVID-19 team demands of government mandatory coronavirus testing for students and education staff ahead of reopening of schools. We speak to them live and head to Parliament, where leadership is frustrated. MPs and staff who have tested positive defy orders to stay home. Final year students return to school next week. We've heard from university heads today. We engage students on preparedness of some of the tertiary institutions across the country. We're live on the campuses to find out as disinfection continue. Experts call for Flood Act, arguing that could manage the country's perennial flooding problems, killing people. We hear from Head of Settlement Studies at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Remember, we're live on your digital TV, free to air. You can catch us on DSTV 421, GoTV 144. We're streaming live on YouTube, and we want to hear from you. Text us or WhatsApp us on 054-010-9009. My name is Gifty Andopia. This is The Pulse. Please be my guest. The opposition NDC says it is concerned about the extent of coronavirus in communities around the country. The country recorded more than 400 cases in less than 24 hours, bringing the total to less than 200 to hit the 11,000 mark. In its latest reporting on the official website, the Ghana Health Service says the Upper East region alone saw a jump of 86. This afternoon, it is now emerging as many as 70 doctors have tested positive so far to coronavirus in Ghana. As President Akufo-Addo continues with his plan to gradually ease the restrictions, many are questioning that decision. More shortly when we speak to Alex Segmafia, member of the NDC's COVID-19 team. They are worried about the reopening of schools. So today we've decided to find out how prepared the schools are for Monday. Manuel Kranting is at the University of Ghana and will join me shortly. But before then, listen to the Education Minister on reopening of schools.
The President has set up a special team under the office of the Senior Minister with the Director General of Ghana Health Service, Director General of Ghana Education Service, the Director General of the Military Logistics, the Director General, Deputy Director General of Police Welfare, the Ministry of Information, the Ministry of Local Government, to coordinate in the distribution of logistics and then ensure that schools reopening happens safely and securely. We do know that this COVID has brought into bear the need to embrace blended learning, because we are getting into a new normal. And it is imperative that the universities and all Ghana educational institutions adopt blended learning. So going forward, I do know that the University of Ghana had already taken steps in this direction.
You had the Education Minister there. We'll go to University of Ghana. But first, let me take you to the central region, where we're told that a number of health professionals have tested positive. What it means is that they're going to stay at home. There's an impact on their health, and there's an impact on healthcare delivery generally in that area. Richard Kojonyako is our correspondent. He's joining me right now. Hello, Richard. Richard, I hope that you hear me. Bring us up to date on the situation with the health professionals who tested positive at Winneba.
Well, so it's actually at Mankasim in the Mfantsiman municipality. The municipality has recorded 24 health staff who tested positive for the virus. They started recording the cases in the municipality about a month ago, and so far about 76 cases, and then out of the 76, they have 24 of them being health professional. This has really brought untold demand on the facilities. The Sopon Government Hospital, for instance, a lot of the staff would have to be isolated. They have to do self-isolation in their homes, and this has also some bearing on their families as well as their associates as well. Apart from that, 24 of them are going away, and part of their contact are also health professionals. So they would have to strategize to ensure that the workload is also still being done. And so they say that they want some support. And then they mentioned about the PPEs, the fact that they use PPEs that are only the cloth, they do not have the N95 one, which they explain that is been causing a lot of the problems for the health staff. Apart from that, I think social distancing has also become a major challenge for the health staff here in the central region, because within themselves, we are told that when they meet among themselves, they do not social distance, or they do not even wear the face masks. That is also causing some of the problems we are having in the region.
Last time we spoke, which was yesterday, you indicated that they had been told to isolate or self-isolate, and they had to do this in their homes. They had some concerns about it. Have those concerns been addressed?
So these are two separate incidents. The 24 health staff is happening in the Infantimal municipality, and then the one that happened was at Winneba, Efutu, to be precise, the hospital there. That is where the staff were told to go home and do the self-isolation, and they raised the concerns there that they are going home without knowing their status. Some recount that when they come and take their samples, it takes about 2 weeks, and which is unduly long. And in the process, they infect other people, and they themselves even stand the risk of being infected if they are negative. And so these are the concerns that they have been raising.
Health professionals there, I mean health authorities, they're concerned about the impact this will have on healthcare delivery generally.
Well, they say that the health system cannot grind to a halt as a result of this, so they are going to map out strategies to contain the situation. They are going to ensure that they do put a lot of things in place in order to ensure that work still goes on, because it's not only COVID that they treat, they also have to take care of the general cases in the hospitals, for the Cape Coast Teaching Hospital, for the RIM Hospital, for the other hospitals that are also around. So they are mapping out strategies in order to contain the situation. Otherwise, we stand the risk of, a massive closure. Otherwise, a lot of the health facilities would have to close down.
Let's talk about how the schools are prepared for reopening. What can you tell us about preparation on the campuses there?
So currently, at the University of Cape Coast, the Zoom Lion Company Limited is embarking on a mass disinfection exercise within the halls of residence, at the offices, and the academic space. The university has outlined a lot of measures to welcome the student back to campus. You know, these are final year students. They have some project work. But for the University of Cape Coast, what they are going to do is to undertake some tutorials. They also do some revision, and then subsequently the examination would follow. They are also putting in place the no mask, no entry policy. And so if you go to the various halls of residence, the plan is that the halls, the rooms that hitherto used to take about 8 or 4 or 6, these rooms will take 2. So 2 students are going to occupy 1 room. This is a departure from what used to happen in the normal times. They are also going to distribute face masks and then check the temperature of students and other lecturers who would want to enter their spaces, the academic spaces, the halls, and then the various hospitals, the various offices as well. And so that is by far what the University of Cape Coast is currently doing. The same thing is ongoing. This morning there was another disinfection exercise at the University of Education, Winneba, and then the Jumaku campus, the School of Languages at the Jumaku. The disinfection is also going on. Winneba is also welcoming their final year student back to campus, and they have put in place almost the same measures that the University of Cape Coast has put in place.
Interesting ones there. I have a very final question for you. We'll be joined by Alex Egbefia, former health minister and also a member of the NDC COVID-19 team. So we discussed their concerns further. But the concern really is that, Richard, they want teachers and students to be tested before school reopens. What are people saying about these concerns in your area?
they say that is much ado about nothing, because if you test the person and the person enters, when the person comes back, the person could be infected and still come back. So are they going to, the question they are asking is, are they going to test them whenever they go out and they come in on a daily basis or on regular times? So they were also even saying that the university should have still continued with their online sessions and then conducted the exams online. But they do not know why they are reopening school for them to come back, and they stand the risk of being infected. And so these are the concerns of the students here at the University of Cape Coast.
Richard, thank you very much. Richard Kojonyako is our Central Regional Correspondent. We'll also take you to the University of Ghana campus, where Manuel is standing by to give us the update. Hello, Manuel. Manuel, what can you report from the University of Ghana campus in terms of preparation for Monday?
Of protocols, key amongst which would be the fact that it has in the past couple of days been disinfecting the campus. So we've seen all the academic facilities and even the residential facilities also undergo some considerable level of disinfection. We've seen also the implementation, so like the institution of the no face mask, no entry policy. So all students, or if you like, people who are coming to campus will not be given access into any university facility without their face masks on. I also take that before any of the students is given access into the halls, there's going to be, they're going to use the thermometer guns to check their temperature and make sure that they are not between the range that is suspected to be for the COVID-19 cases. So generally, in fact, many of these ones are the things that we've seen being put in place on University of Ghana's campus.
I believe that there was disinfection there as well. Can you give us an update on that disinfection process?
If you could just repeat that again, because I'm not getting clearly.
Okay, I'm talking about the disinfection. Disinfections going on around the campuses.
Yes, it's in fact disinfected all the residential facilities. We've seen the edifice of the BAM library also being disinfected, and all the rooms on campus essentially have been disinfected. What I think is that beyond the disinfection, beyond the disinfection exercise, all the residents, the final year students who are coming to campus will be limited to 2 in a room. And so typically, University of Ghana has about 4 students residing in every room, but they're reducing that number to at most 2 in the rooms where you have more than 1 final year student. And so it's quite progressive. In fact, we've seen some collaboration with the SRC, which is also speaking to a number of the continuing students who might have left their belongings in the rooms now to be inhabited by the final year students.
Manuel, just a very quick one. What do the students themselves say about this? Are they happy with it? Are they happy to come back to school on Monday?
The lines really are bad.
Okay. Let's try this again. Let's try this again. See if you can hear me properly now. What are the students themselves saying about how safe they feel coming back to school on Monday?
Well, generally, if you're asking about safety, all the safety protocols are in place. For them, the use of the hand sanitizers, the social distancing protocols, the hand washing regime, and so on and so forth, all of them are in place. But they tell us that it may be inconveniencing, and this is why, because for a lot of the final year students who are coming back to campus, we are told that they will not be given access to receive any visitors in the halls. So this means that all their visitors will be received outside the halls. That means that there's not going to be any group studies whatsoever, because they're coming back to campus to write the exams. And if they're not going to have access to be doing group studies and congregating, they feel that is a bit inconveniencing. But generally on the safety protocol, it's one that we're seeing that everybody is quite satisfied about.
So Manuel spoke to some of the students. We've taken you to Cape Coast, the central region. We've taken you to the University of Ghana campus. Let's hear from some of the students. We'll go to Kumasi as well, find out what is happening, and then we'll have that big conversation with the NDC. Listen to some of the students.
I'm ready to come to school on the 15th. I expect that Ghana Legon would have put in all the necessary measures to be able to observe all the safety protocols, because there might be contact in one way or the other, and we would write our exams in peace.
I'm quite enthusiastic about returning to campus. As regards safety, I think from what it looks like, it's like the onus lies more on the students to just play safely, play by the rules and maintain social distancing. I don't see much being done by the school, but I think...
For me, I'm not coming to school because I don't see the reason why I should come. I don't think I'll come to school. The kind of rules they're putting in place, I think they're a bit too strict. There are no visitors allowed, they're locking the doors at 10 p.m. and stuff. Okay, so some of us would like to study in groups, and I think it's unfair that if I want to study with someone who is also in diaspora but is not in my home, I would have to go to main campus. After seeing the rules, I don't want to come to campus anymore. I'm ready to come to school on the 15th.
So those are some students talking to us from the University of Ghana campus. Erastus Asaridonko is joining me from Kumasi. Hello, Erastus.
Hello, Gifty.
Erastus, what can you report? How are schools in your region preparing to open up?
Yeah, we've been to the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, and today happens to coincide with a tour that was being organized by the Vice Chancellor, Professor Obridanso, and the entire administration. They were going around to observe whether they put in the right measures for students to come back. And what we saw was that they fumigated a lot of the lecture rooms that will be used. They've also disinfected one particular hostel, that's the SRC hostel, which we learned will be used specifically for the students who will be lodging on campus. The whole student population is about 13,000. They are just expecting just a few students to come in at this particular moment. They are still going to use the virtual learning protocols. They told me that many of the students are okay with it, and so they are going to use that. They are going to bring in more students from the humanities. They are also going to bring in those with the medical field as well. And so those of the studying medicine will be doing that. They'll be lodging at the Konfanochi Teaching Hospital Doctors Hostel. That is where they will be lodging. That place we learned has been disinfected as well. The others will be using the SRC hostel, and they will be keeping one student per room. In areas where they were using 4 in a room, they are now limiting it to 1 student per room. That is what I've been told. And they've also put in other measures where you wash your hands and go through the hand washing protocol before you enter. They'll be using sanitizers as well. They'll be supplying nose masks to students to be using them at the various lecture halls. And so that is the preparation at the moment for students to come in.
What do the students themselves say? Have you engaged any of them? Are they comfortable coming back to school? To what extent even?
In fact, we saw a queue of students in front of the SRC hostel and then at the Queen's Hall as well, people who were bringing out their luggages, and were told that those halls will be used ahead of time, and so they've asked the students in there, some of them would like to bring their luggages home. And so we saw many of them picking out their luggages from the various hostels. So they are saying that they are not the ones who are coming in, and so they will not have much to share. But I also asked the PRO, the URO, a question about foreign students, and I was told that Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology has 400 foreign students. Many of them did not go back home. Some of them have been staying on campus for the past 3 months. Those who went back home They are liaising with government to bring them back, but then they have a testing facility. And so when they come in, they will have to quarantine them, take them through testing before they admit them back to school.
Erastus, thank you for that update. Erastus Asare-Donkor joined us from Kumasi. So we've taken you to the central region. You've had an idea what's happening there in terms of preparations. We came back here to the capital. You've seen what's happening at the University of Ghana, what they're saying as well. We've taken you to the Ashanti region. I'm bringing in the NDC's a member of the NDC's COVID-19 team, Alice Segbefia, who is also a former Minister for Health. Mr. Segbefia, thank you very much for waiting patiently and listening to all that we had to say. I want to bring you, lay these things, the things that our reporters are bringing up from the universities, from the campuses to you. Disinfection exercises are ongoing, and it's been ongoing for some time now. Safety protocols, they are observing all of these. They are syndicated halls. They've reduced the numbers, and they're looking at combining both being present to study and then studying remotely. And there is also no visitors allowed. So policies like no visitors allowed, doors are closing at a particular time, so hand washing protocols, all of these. Are these not enough if we have to come back to a certain semblance of normalcy?
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your viewers and listeners. Can I say that all these measures that have been put in place are fantastic and good for the position where you're trying to get back to school. However, there are two issues that are of concern. One, the virus is on the rise, or the spread. The numbers are increasing each day. Now it's on a daily increase. And our health staff are also becoming ill. Taking those factors into account, we were of the view, and are of the view, that we should actually have had a system where, for those who are going to the boarding premises, those that are going to be staying on campuses, and they are not going to have visitors, they are not going to be let out, they should have been tested. And that would bring us straight into the realms of mass testing. We have always said, it's nothing new, that we believe that to have got a good database to actually make decisions we are making, we needed to move from contact tracing, enhanced tracing, to testing. Without doing this, we would not be in a position.
Sorry, Mr. Segbefia, I need to interrupt you briefly. You indicated that we needed to move from mass testing to something. I lost you. To what?
No, from enhanced testing,
right,
and contact tracing to mass testing. Okay. We should be doing mass testing at this stage. In order to do mass testing, you need rapid test kits, which give you results within 2 to 4 hours. And one would have hoped by now, in all this time that this has been going on, some kits would have been given to the FDA, which would have approved them to say that, look, these are good test kits that can be used, and it would have got quite a few of them into the system. And as these first set of students are going in, they will be tested. And if you are found positive, provision will be made for you to be either quarantined at home or in an isolation center, depending on the symptoms and signs that you're showing. But it means that for the first set of people going into the school premises, you have some semblance of belief that a good number of them are not carriers of the disease because you have tested them. It is true that somebody may show his signs once he's on campus, maybe 7 days later, but those that are already showing symptoms would have been taken out of the equation, which will reduce the risk, because all these things or measures we are taking is to reduce risk. That's all it does. It doesn't mean you cannot still contract. So any measure you can take to reduce risk, you should be taking. And we are of the view that we should have tested all the students. It would have been the first step towards mass testing, which is what we really need to do in this country. We are not doing mass testing, and we have always said it's necessary.
Mass testing, that requires a lot of money, a lot of resources. And let's begin with the students. Is that even realistic? Even in the United States, they are not able to test as many as possible. So for a developing country like that.
That is actually not correct. They are doing a lot of testing in the United States.
They are, but is it mass testing? Would you describe that as mass testing?
Test the whole country. No one is saying test the whole country. That's not what we are saying. If today, for example, we hear that Abekan has become a hotspot because in the Abekan area or Teshi area, the numbers are increasing a lot. Go to Teshi and test everybody in Teshi. They don't say test everybody in Accra. That's not what we are saying. Test everybody in Teshi, and it will give you a good idea of the spread. So when we talk about mass testing, we are talking about not specifically looking at people for the fact that they had contact with somebody or they happen to be in a small vicinity of that person. No, make the circle wider and test more people within that circle. It's being done elsewhere. It should, if we want a good database and record to know exactly what is happening in this country, that is where we need to go. We can decide. And as for the financial argument, I don't wear it, because we have seen the donations and the amount of money that has been given to the fund that was set up for COVID. We are aware that special dispensations have been given to this country in terms of holding back on certain monies that don't need to be paid on interest so that we could use it to fight COVID. We are aware that 1 billion was also borrowed at 0% interest to help us with our economy, but also to help fight COVID. So there is some money to do this. And we have money to decide to build 80, hospitals, or should I say even more, when you talk of the regional hospitals, which we are not going to use immediately, but we are making that money available. So for me, the financial argument does not hold. This is part of the reason we said, let's look at the issues facing us now and let's deal with them. As we plan for the future, you must deal with the present. If not, the present will affect the future, no matter what plans you have for it.
When you say the hospitals that are being built, I'm assuming you're referring to the 80 district hospitals, 800.
Hospitals.
So,
Yes.
88 hospitals, district hospitals that was announced. But you said we won't need them, but we're seeing increasingly
I didn't say that.
Okay, you're saying that we're looking to build. Just clarify for me what exactly you mean with what you said.
What I mean is that we are making funds available for 88 hospitals to be built within a year. And therefore, it's imperative that some of this money should be diverted towards dealing with our immediate problems, which are first, PPEs, and second, rapid testing.
Is the health facility itself that's needed to take care of people not a part of the priority list that we should be looking at from your perspective?
It's a big priority. And we've had hospitals closed for a long time. We've had hospitals that haven't been built. Let's finish them off, and let's think about the 88 that are going to come in the future, and let's plan towards them. But you're sending people to school next week. Why haven't we had rapid testing kits? We've got people in hospital now. Doctors are falling ill. Why don't we have enough PPEs going out? And we have the money to purchase. We've been told today that there are actually drugs and PPEs at the port which have not been cleared for a while due to issues with regard to the system or whatever. Why isn't the government putting in certain protocols that will allow those things to come out into the system so they can help our frontline medical staff? These are straightforward, simple issues. And nobody is saying that what the government wants to do with hospitals or what the government wants to do in the future is not a good thing and it's not worthwhile for Ghana. We all want it. But we have an immediate problem. How do we deal with it? I haven't even gone into the education aspect. The complacency with regard to COVID-19 at the moment is almost untrue. The way people are behaving, it's almost as if, well, it's not with me, I'm not going to get it. I don't need to wear masks, social distancing, even amongst the same medical fraternity. It's a lackadaisical attitude, and that is also raising the issue of people getting sick. But that is an educational issue that the government must take responsibility for.
We're looking at going back to school. I mean, it looks as if at the moment that the plans have been made. In fact, some of the students have already signed up. They're going back to school on Monday. In the absence of mass testing, as you are advocating, what do you think can be done?
Well, the government is doing all it can at the moment. all I would say is that the numbers are rising. We have other countries which have sent people back to school, and then subsequently they've closed down the school and said, go back home. I'm hoping that this will not happen in our case, that we'll be able to send our students into school, that they will not get infected, and that they will be in a position to write their exams and leave. We all want the best for the country, and this is one of the things that we are hoping would be achieved. The science does not tell us that that is what is going to happen. Our prayers do.
Our prayers do, you say. And you talk about complacency. What government has indicated that we're doing a lot more testing. In fact, the statistics were out earlier at the early stages of this outbreak, where Ghana was among about, I think, the top 10 countries in the sub-region that was conducting rapid tests. So whilst you talk about complacency, wouldn't you say that we've done at least something good that we can build upon?
I haven't never said we haven't done anything good. So let me correct that, because I have never said we haven't done anything good. We've done quite a number of good things in this process. But that does not mean that all the good things you've done can easily be eroded by a situation being created which will make things extremely bad. So let us be clear. We are in a position where you started with contact tracing. When the thing moved from people who were and it started, the community spread started, we moved to enhanced contact tracing and then enhanced testing. You have reached a stage where you should now move to the next level, which is mass testing, and you haven't done that. So it's a progression, and we are saying we have stopped at a point which is not going to help us. That is the point we are making. The government has done a number of good things. For example, the idea that PPE should be produced in Ghana and medical equipment, sanitizers are being produced in Ghana for our use is brilliant. It's a fantastic position. It helps us two ways. One, we get the items very quickly when we need them. And two, they are being produced in Ghana by Ghanaian manufacturers, and that is one thing that helps. And we learned a lot when we went for the Ghana Beyond Aid yesterday in some of these issues. However, if the PPEs that are being produced internally are not enough or are not of the quality that is required for certain ICUs, then it's imperative that you begin to import emergency stash to hold to such time that the local position is able to produce them at the level or at the standard that is required. Because everywhere you go, you keep hearing PPEs. We don't have enough PPEs. And these are things that are used frequently. Yeah. Once you get one case in any one place, you use it frequently. So the supply must be continuous. And as more people get it across the regions, so does the demand. It is important that the government gets in front of the curve as opposed to chasing the curve.
Just two quick things that we wrap up, Mr. Segbefia. First of all, I want to find out the ideas that the NDC COVID-19 team has for dealing with a number of health officials who are getting infected. What can we do? What do you think we can do?
Well, one, the education doesn't simply stop with the populace. Actually, health staff and doctors and pharmacists, etc., are actually the people who need the most amount of convincing to do something, because they know so much. They sometimes are not convinced that certain actions are the best, or they feel that, look, I'm taking enough precautions, I'm taking enough medication. So they sometimes are even more complacent than the ordinary person in the street. They don't have a certain phobia. So there has to be some serious level of education for our people in the health sector. But most of it is not down to that. Most of it is down to lack of the right equipment for the job. And they have been screaming, those who are on the ball have been screaming, and those who don't know about it are saying, you are not equipping us properly to deal with the problems we have. Therefore, for us saying that everybody should wear masks, the domestic masks are for those who, for me and you, who are doing everyday jobs. But for the health sector, they need professional masks, N95s, which don't allow things in, which don't allow things out. They need to be equipped properly. If they are going to use PPEs, it's not partial PPEs, it's from top to bottom, boots, etc. So in actual fact, that in itself is not a cheap proposition, but we don't have a choice if we have to protect our medical staff and our frontliners. So we need PPEs to become a matter of priority, and we have to get in front of it. We should make sure that they can just pick as they need and use. That is not happening. And the more of our people that get sick, the more we are putting more other people under pressure, the more they have to work longer hours, the more they become careless because they have been working so long, they are tired, and they make a mistake or two with people who are already infected, and then they get infected, and then it becomes a downward spiral. So it is important that we get the actual equipment that they need. Can I also make a simple point about the argument that is being put forward that about mass testing or testing students? If you test the person goes and he gets sick, then there's no point in the test. Why are we fumigating the schools? If you fumigate the school and then somebody comes into the school and is infected, he will still infect other people. But we realize that it's a preventative measure that can help. The same with having mass testing or testing students before they go in. It is a preventative measure. It will reduce the number of people who go into the school that that may be ill and reduce the rate of spread. Everything we do is preventative. The government has done quite a few things well. This is our recommendation and our advice to government, and we hope that in the future as we go on, because there will come a time when maybe you want to send all the students back in. We pray that some vaccine will be found before that. We pray that it will just go away like SARS did and not stay as long as this thing or Ebola, and it will go through a phase. All this is within prayer. And what we must work with now is the science, and we need the right data to work with the science. To get the right data, you need mass testing. Thank you.
That was my last but one question. I said that I had two more. So I like the chain that you paint here about the fact that the more, it's not cheap, but the more they don't, they get sick, the more the pressure, and then the more the carelessness, and the more mistakes they make. It looks like some very good ideas there. Have you engaged government to help with these ideas to get things done? And what response do you get?
We've engaged government. This is the third, I think, paper we've done with regard to government. Many of these things are known to government, but perhaps are not being, sometimes you have to refresh people's memories and tell them. We have never been called to a table to discuss this issue with anybody. So we put it on a paper. There have been controversy as to what position we play with regard to the advice we give or not, with politics getting in the way. It hasn't deterred us from giving the advice like I'm speaking to you now. We are hoping that some of their people are listening and will take some of the snippets. You will remember that when masks first were put forward, it was put forward by the flag bearer and then by the COVID team that we should wear masks. We didn't wear masks for maybe 4 to 6 weeks after we gave that advice. And now that advice is advice which everyone is doing and saying, look, it doesn't solve the problem, but it helps. So let us all wear masks once we're in a public place. So I am clear that it's important that we continue to speak out. We don't do it in a derogatory manner. We question it. We like to think that what we are doing is constructive criticism. And we are also commending government when they have done the right things. And that is why I've talked about the production of the measures that are being taken for students to go in, etc. But government and government institutions are sending wrong mixed messages out. And I can give you a plethora of the mixed messages that are going out. But then I would delve into the realms of politics with the NIA and the EC, so I would not go there this afternoon. Okay.
Well, let's leave it at health instead of getting into the politics and the election. But it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt if you threw in a word or two. Let me just read for you some messages I'm getting on the back of this conversation. This message is from Sheriff from Salaga. He says, as final year students are resuming social distancing will not be adhered to effectively, especially in their dormitories where there is crowding. It's a good idea for them, but I think the student must obey all safety protocols by Ministry of Health and Ghana Health Service. From Salaga, thank you very much for sending that message in. This one says, good work done, and it's a prayer the student will be safe in there. Eric from Kumasi, Breman Brakwa. This one says, Gifty, we're gambling with our irreplaceable lives. Can we all get the thermometer guns in our schools before we start classes? IBN Malik Kumasi is asking that particular question. I don't have the answer. I beg your pardon. This one says, JoyNews is putting in so much to ensure safety protocols with regards to COVID-19, but unfortunately, those supposed to see it don't. I would be glad if giant screens would be mounted and then people would see those who have lost their lives to sound as a warning to the general public. Sina or Sina, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, sends that one from Osu. That will be my final message for now, Mr. Segwefia. Giant screen to project the casualties. In your perspective, is that a workable solution? Just on the back of the messages, because I was finished.
No, I think that the education can take different formats, depending on and it's not a one-size-fits-all education process. You have to decide which audience you're trying to target and give the message out to that audience. And the audience is for all of us. So you have to have messages that children can easily understand. You have to have messages which are going to be for the young, adventurous lot. Don't forget, we've lifted restrictions. Churches are open, so are weddings and funerals, etc. And whereas prior to this, a lot of our elderly folk would have been indoors and therefore has helped to keep our mortality rate down because they are the most vulnerable. Many of them are going to start venturing out now that there are few restrictions lifted, and therefore we will be more at risk. It is important, therefore, at this time, as we lift restrictions, that we increase the amount of education we've given, that we tell people more, and the message must be segmented for each sector of the society. And that would be very important to ensure that we end up with a situation which we can handle. All this is because if the numbers become too much, our health systems cannot cope. That was what happened in Europe and in America. It got to a point that the numbers were such that they could not cope. And Ghana has less health systems. But so far, God being so good, we've been able to more or less contain it. But if it gets out of hand, we're going to be in trouble.
Hopefully it won't get out of hand, but I'm becoming really notorious for doing this. I'll say it's the final question, and then some way, somehow, something comes up. I'll make this the very final one,
Mr. Because of what I said. No problem.
So concerning the elections, though, when there is registration when there is COVID-19, I know there's the battle going on and all. No, we won't go into that so much because we don't even have the time. But the NDC, I'm sure, because at the pilot, people went out. The NDC executives were out to also be a part of that pilot process. What is the NDC COVID-19 team's recommendation on registration in this COVID-19 time?
The first thing I should say is that there was no pilot. There was no pilot in the true sense of the word, because you cannot use old machines to carry out a pilot. The whole idea of a pilot is to use what you're going to use to go through a process. And at none of the centers that I'm aware of was there facial recognition machines used. At most of the centers, they brought in old machines to try the process. That is not a pilot. So that is the first port of call. Second port of call, why are we even, every time you allow people to amass, you give COVID a holiday and allow it to spread. With this new system that we are putting in place, we are asking 3 million people to go and pick up NIA cards, which they have already applied for. That is a risk to all those 3 million people, as well as the workers. Beyond that, you've asked for another potential 5 million people who have never registered to try and go and register now for the NIA card. that is a risk to those 5 million as well as the health workers, the NIA staff. You're now going to ask 16 to 17 million Ghanaians to go out and queue. That is the bumper harvest for COVID-19. The cocoa season will come in at that point. And then the big one is when we also now have to go and vote on the 7th of December. All these three will be removed. The first three, the 3 million, the 5 million, the 16 million will all go out the window the moment the EC decides that I will do my best and I'll use the old register. The only risk we will have to then take, because we are only trying to minimize risk, is to then go for the 7th of December election. And we pray by the 7th of December, to some level, COVID might be under some control or we'll understand it better. But to put us in that risk now is irresponsible. It's unfair to us as Ghanaians, especially since there is an alternative. And that is not talking about the law or the issues. This is purely on a humanitarian basis. I don't understand it. I never will.
Mr. Segbefia, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much and for your perspectives that you've shared with us. Alex Segbefia is a member of the NDC's COVID-19 team. He's a former health minister. This is The Pulse. And when I return from this break, we'll hear from people who are burying people who have died from COVID-19. They have a warning for you, especially those of you who do not believe or still think that COVID-19 is a hoax. We'll be back. Welcome back to the show. Many thanks for staying with us. Protect yourself. That is a caution from the public health official burying COVID-19 patients as reports emerge of more Ghanaian contracting the deadly disease. Frustrated relatives and friends of some persons who were being prepared for burial after reportedly dying from the disease displayed their anger over the handling of the situation on Thursday. One Muslim family, for example, had lost 3 relatives to the disease within the last month, but they say none of the immediate relations or contacts of the deceased have been traced and tested since the deaths. Komla Adom has been following this burial and has more in this report.
Clad in red and black in 2s, 3s and sometimes more, at the 37 military hospital morgue Thursday morning, relatives of 3 people reported to have died of COVID complications wept. Accra Metropolitan Assembly officials had gone to collect the bodies for burial to be strictly supervised by environmental health workers.
This is the 5th burial for COVID-19 victims, and burials are strictly supervised and monitored by the Environmental Health Department of the Metropolitan Assembly of Accra. We're burying 5 bodies at a go. This is a set of 4 bodies, 3 bodies from here, 37 military hospital here. We're moving to the Awudome Cemetery to give them a befitting burial there. From there, we're going for another body at the Rich Hospital. That is 2 bodies there, and do the same to them. 2 other bodies from the Greater Accra Regional Hospital will add to the initial 3 to make it 5 bodies to be buried Thursday. But after the first 3 were laid to rest at the Infectious Diseases Cemetery at Awudome, it will be a struggle to get the other 2. Angry relatives at the Rage Hospital will not allow the AMA officials and our crew to get close. They accuse health officials of not properly handling their relatives. 3 of their relatives have died from COVID in separate instances, but none of the close contacts has been tested. It's been almost 40 days since our mother died. They say she died of COVID, yet nobody has been to her home. Nobody has traced to find out where she lives. None of us has been tested. They also contest their relatives died of a disease.
One of our relatives, for example, had been sick for 2 years, yet they say she died of COVID. On top of that, all the hospitals we have been to have taken monies from us for preservation and burial. We cannot understand. This is not fair. The family alleges in all 3 instances, hospital officials demanded monies from them for preserving and burial of their dead. Meanwhile, the Public Health Directorate of the Accra Metropolitan Assembly is warning it may be handicapped in burying the dead if they are not provided the needed equipment and materials.
The challenges we have is enormous. These bodies, they are infectious bodies, which we don't have to use the public haste in transporting the bodies to this infectious zone. We have made appeal to the state, the government, to support us with a movable and befitting double cabin pickups that we can always carry these bodies safely to the burial site. You can see that the movement through where we will bring the bodies to is a serious challenge. There is no adequate space for movement. Coming into the place is difficult. And the haze has to stop at the end of the entrance. The officers have to carry this body. Imagine how heavy it is. With these 3 stumps, there's the possibility and high risk of infection to the officers. And therefore, if we have a good transport system that this body is placed in and it moves closer to the grave space, we will have easy way of removing the body and placing it safely.
How about even some of the officials who were in the buckets? I mean, this all adds to the whole transport system.
Risk. You can see that when we were transporting the bodies from the mortuary, because of inadequate transport facility for the department, to be able to adequately transport the officers safely to the burial site, you see that they were all hanged in the bucket. Very serious risk, and even poses a serious stigma to the public, because you see the traffic we were moving through, which is not allowed, that the public should see that this is the regalia. We are going with the COVID dart, though it tells the public to know that the COVID is there, that we need to be safe with the officers who are responsible for the burial. We are appealing, with all apologies, we are appealing whoever is responsible to support the Metro Public Health of AMA, the Environmental Health Department, Metro Public Health Department, with a movable truck, quick equipment, double cabin pickup, very special, which we can easily transport these bodies here. We do disinfection, we do the burial, which we have no any form of equipment to transport and carry all these duties as we are here today. We have to improvise the means of bringing the bodies here. We have to improvise the means of laying the bodies to rest. We are appealing to government. We are ready. We are called to duty. We are called to carry out our mandate, but we need to be resourced.
Thank you. You heard the very passionate Inspector Setanga there. I mean, these people are giving off their all, for the good of the country, for God and country, and all they say that they need to be adequately resourced to be able to carry out this particular mandate that they have given up themselves to in help or Mother Ghana as we battle this COVID-19. So you can see some wreaths also laid there. In a short time, the family members will come, lay the wreaths on the tombs, and then pay their final respects to their departed.
Coronavirus is real. Head of Settlement Studies at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Professor Divine Haji, is calling for a Flood Control Act. Professor Haji identifies the current building regulations and codes offer limited guidelines and are not fit for purpose. He also believes that the act will help elevate flooding as a national issue, regulate many aspects of construction and civil engineering. From Kumasi, Kwesi Deborah reports.
At Abuabo, in the Asokoro municipality of the Ashanti region, 14-year-old Ibrahim and his friends are on a casual fishing expedition. The flood-prone areas rendered this house almost uninhabitable. A family of 8 has managed to stay here since the situation worsened some 4 years ago. Fishers in nearby rivers have therefore found it a safe haven. This is one of the many houses in the vicinity battling with flood waters. The Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly is therefore planning to demolish these houses. Before that, KNUST Head of Settlement Studies, Professor Divine Haji, is urging government to have a scheme in place to resettle all persons living in flood-prone areas.
I'm proposing that if you look at all these low-lying areas and the flood-prone areas, it is time for the government to move in to acquire those areas and do re-engineering of the whole area. Otherwise, we shall be going back and forth on this discussion of flooding every year. But then, because normally the government wants to go and demolish and displace the people, that is not the solution. The solution is a whole re-engineering. But then before the government will do that, they will need to resettle the people, because it's a right for the people to have a housing, and that should also be the government's top priority.
He believes engaging all communities in flood-prone areas to begin flood risk management at the micro level rather than the over-concentration on the macro level.
So that's why going forward, I'm saying that for the long term, we need that kind of re-engineering of our settlements. But then in the short term, we are talking about a community-based flood risk management, which we need to bring the community to be able to develop their own flood risk plan, have a community together, and then develop their recovery plan and meet regularly on flooding issues, and that will help in addressing flooding at the community level as a short-term phenomenon. And with the way things are going now, when it comes to flood design, the building code and the building regulation is not specific, it's just general, and even the code captures just a few areas on flooding. But now that it has become a national issue, we need a flood control act that will guide everything relating to settlement design and planning, so that when one is executing a project, flooding will not be something that one has to do because it's at one's own will, but the law mandates the person to execute certain things because the place is likely to flood for it. And I'm also seeing a situation where when you have the Flood Control Act, it will help to raise flooding as a national issue.
Until these measures are put in place, Ibrahim and his friends will discover more houses for their expedition. For JoyNews, Kwesi Deborah.
Thinking about flooding and fishing and that flooding. Interesting one there. Well, let's go to Parliament, where leadership and the COVID-19 team there appear frustrated and maybe helpless in getting MPs and staff who have tested positive for COVID-19 to stay away from the House. Presenting the business statement, Majority Leader Osei Mensah-Bonsu cautioned persons who have tested positive after the mandatory testing and have been contacted to stop visiting the House. The Swami MP observed that the affected persons, including some journalists, have defied the communication from the COVID-19 team that they should stay away because they're positive.
Because if you remember, this is the same majority leader who bastardized, who vehemently disagreed with Honorable Muntaka, the minority chief whip. When the minority chief whip was saying that we should not cover up, just like all Ghanaians, if there are positive cases in Parliament, the entire country must know. He was not even saying that the individuals should be named. Now, he even went ahead, the majority leader went ahead to say that even if there are members of Parliament who have tested positive, they were going to be called individually. And therefore, he will not get the opportunity to know who and who have tested positive. Now, this same person comes back to tell us on the floor of the House that there are members of Parliament who have tested positive and they are still with us on the floor of the House. He goes ahead to say that there are some staff that he saw yesterday interacting with members of Parliament who have tested positive. How did he get to know now? All of a sudden now he knows. How did he get to know? And who is he reporting to? He's the leader of the House. What has he done about that? Why can't he engage those same people? Quite apart from that, and I keep telling you people that this government keeps playing politics with our health. You know why? As at the time the minority chief whip stated that we should not cover up, the CI 126 had not matured. So the majority leader was of the opinion that if it becomes worse, Parliament will shut down, and then the CI 126 will not get matured. Now he has waited until the CI 126 has matured. He's coming back to tell us that now he's privy to those who have contracted the virus. I am ashamed. And for me, the Speaker must be firm. As a matter of urgency, Parliament must be closed with immediate effect. Because if people have tested positive and they have communicated it to them and they still come to Parliament, we are at a very high risk, including you, the media. He was complaining to who? He's a leader of government's business. He's a minister of state. He has the president here. Who is he reporting to? Who is he complaining to? What has he done about the problem? I believe that we are not safe and that Parliament must be closed down. And thank you.
Your own colleagues who have tested positive and have defied the stay-home orders and are coming to Parliament, and they putting yourself and everybody else at risk. And they also rational human beings to know that once you be asked to stay home, stay home.
You see, if you begin to think that way, then there shouldn't be laws or rules or regulations in any country, because human beings are supposed to reason, but it is because there's that temptation to break or to not to reason rationally. That is why there's the need for laws and rules and regulations. And so if the person, of course, he is saying it, I don't know. But if you think that people must test, and that after testing they have tested positive and they must isolate and are not isolating, there must be some kind of punitive measures. You must engage them. And then have a way of, you don't just leave them and say, if you are not isolating, then you are free to mingle with your colleagues. You know, it is even in their own interest, those members of Parliament, it is even in their own interest to isolate and get proper treatment. Because as you all know, we have been told by the experts that it is only your immune system which can fight the virus. Isn't that true? So the more you rest, eat well, that is when you boost your immune system and you'll be able to fight the virus. But if you have tested positive and you keep working like we are all doing, running up and down, going for committee meetings, and how will you boost your immune system? You understand? So for me, it is not only about those who have tested positive and yet coming to Parliament, but it's about leadership. What are we doing?
One, per the treatment protocols, once you test positive, the team traces you, comes for you. That's what's happening out there. Why is Parliament different?
Well, we have been told it depends on your situation. If you are not showing signs and the thing is not too grievous, they will call you and then make sure you have isolations. You can isolate yourself in your house and then probably follow up. There are those protocols in place. But if your condition is such that they must come for you, then they will rush and come for you and then isolate you and then treat you. So as for those ones, I mean, there are those. Even I hear that people who can afford to isolate themselves in their houses, they follow up to them and give them treatment. But the point is that if we had isolated all those who have tested positive here, we would have, or even that, after even isolating them, it doesn't mean that nobody will test. I have tested on 2 occasions. I have done 2. The Parliament one was the second one. It doesn't mean that when you test today and you are negative, tomorrow you cannot get the virus.
Kobnaminta Kando, I beg your pardon, we should have indicated earlier, is the minority spokesperson on health. And you will hear from the majority leader, Oseiche Mensah Bonsu, on the frustration. And Mr. Kando essentially was responding to those concerns that are coming from Parliament, that people have tested positive, both members of Parliament and staff, and are refusing to stay away from the house, essentially putting everybody else at risk. We'll hear from the majority leader, but some of your messages that you've sent in, I read them to you, and they all have to do with coronavirus. Most of you, in fact, are talking about the protocols, and some of you are talking about reopening of schools. This message says, I traveled to the Volta region, and I was glad to see everybody with their masks on, because without that, the police will arrest you, and I applaud them for that. But my issue is that the commercial drivers that load from Ho to the neighboring towns don't take the right number of passengers from the town, and along the way, they top it up. And if a passenger dares to complain for them to observe the protocol, they will begin to talk trash, you say. Okay, so we call on the police in the region to enforce these protocols, the police in the Volta region, Ho to be specific, to enforce these laws, as someone has observed. Okay. This message says, after listening to the man at the cemetery, I think that the government must, as a matter of urgency, provide all necessary materials they need for their work. I can't agree with you better. Certainly they should. From Osino, this one said, give to let authorities know that the ECG in Fantiakwa South has given out April bill to houses using postpaid meters and less than 50 watt per month despite the president's directives. Good day, Gifty. This one says, honestly speaking, I don't think reopening of schools is a good idea now, considering the spikes in positive cases. Prince, send that from Community 22. Prince, thanks for sending in your message as well. And the final one before we go to Parliament and listen to the majority leader. This one says, Gifty, will you be surprised to know you will be surprised to know that some centers at the NIA are reopening for collection of cards, but they have no PPEs, just sanitizers. What's the ideology for all these decisions that our leaders are making? I'm wondering how things will be coming months. I'm yet to take information from your amazing reporters. How safe are the workers and citizens of NIA? Morris Akosombo. Let's head to Parliament. Let's hear from the majority leader.
Important to remind all of us, members of parliament, staff, and journalists, that we need to be protective of one another. The Speaker, you and leadership arranged for all of us to be tested for the coronavirus disease that unfortunately has engulfed this country. The arrangement was that anybody who unfortunately tested positive would not be openly identified, but that the testing team would have an arrangement to contact them behind the curtains and have the situation managed. That has been the arrangement. Unfortunately, some people have elected, after contact is made with them, to ignore the appeal from the team, and they visit Parliament, and they endanger the lives of all of us. The issue, Mr. Speaker, is if you submitted yourself, you tested negative, as some of us have. On 2 occasions, I've submitted myself, I've tested negative. But it doesn't mean that I'm out of the woods. If anybody tests positive and comes close to me, chances are that I may contract the disease. And it goes for everybody. Mr. Speaker, so we want to appeal to honorable members, to the staff, and to journalists. The staff and to journalists who have been contacted behind the curtain and who are not submitting themselves to the testing team. You are imperiling the lives of all of us. I think the team is getting frustrated, and we want to appeal once again to members, staff, and journalists that if you are contacted, please don't come and imperil the lives of people. Yesterday, it was observed that one person who had been spoken to had gotten close to some members of parliament and was engaging them, even though he had been spoken to. So please, let's be on the watch out for one another. We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. So colleagues, members of parliament, staff, and journalists, please let's all comply. Otherwise, perhaps the medical team then may be forced to unveil the identity of those of them. And it's not good. They don't intend to do that. But those persons know themselves and they should comply. The Speaker intends, in accord with that, to have an arrangement with the team, such that those of us who were not able, members of Parliament, staff, and journalists who were not able, including even the security personnel with us, were not able to submit themselves, would have the last opportunity to submit themselves, so that we know that all of us are secure operating in this environment.
Osaite Mensah Bonsu there, and that's a very worrying development in Parliament there, that people have been told to stay away but are refusing or are defying that. You hear from Member of Parliament for Kumu, Ras Mubarak, also react to this particular story. He's one of the people who started making a lot of noise about coronavirus in the House. You'll hear from him. But some of you are sending some messages on the back of what the majority leader is saying and what's happening in Parliament. This message says, it's Charles from Cape Coast. He says, so majority leader lied to Ghanaians about the status of COVID cases in Parliament. I think majority must apologize to Ghanaians. Why did he do that? What a shame. I'm sure you're referring to the press conference held some time back when there were reports that, I beg your pardon, that some people have tested positive in the House. All right, let's take this last one and then we can go. All right, let's just go to Parliament and hear from Ras Mubarak, Member of Parliament for Kumu.
Really, that is shocking and very worrying. Shocking that a member of staff would be asked to stay away from the precincts of Parliament, and that staff or member or whoever that person is would actually come to this place and actually have interactions with colleagues and members of Parliament. That is witchcraft, to say the least. You know, and as you may have heard me say on the floor, it is unforgivable, and we take great exception to this very irresponsible act. You know, and I think leadership would have to take necessary measures to make sure that there is compliance and to make sure that those persons involved are actually quarantined. You know, I think that is the way to go.
Some of your colleagues are calling on the leadership to shut down Parliament. Right now, the leader has confirmed it.
I initially was for the shutting down of Parliament, right? But if you look at attendance in the House lately, you realize that there are many colleagues, because of the primaries in their respective constituencies, especially from the other side, you know, so the chamber is largely empty, you know, and the social distancing protocols can be observed within the chamber. But I think, you know, what has happened is most unfortunate, and we just should not take kindly to any one member of staff or MP endangering the lives of members and staff who work here. I think it's irresponsible, to say the least.
Do you think the COVID-19 health team will come after those officials and pick them as they have been doing in the community?
I'm sure from now on, I'm sure leadership would impress upon them, be they staff or members of Parliament, to endeavor not to endanger the lives of the 275 members of Parliament in this House. I mean, if you have COVID-19 or if you've tested positive, it is just fair that you would stay away from the precincts of Parliament so that you don't expose your colleagues and staff and other people who work here. You know, but to defy advice and to actually physically be present in Parliament.
Mubarak, Member of Parliament for Kumbogo, one of the very first people who started making noise about taking the necessary protocols in Parliament. And some of you have been reacting. This one says, Gifty, I don't get it. Members of Parliament test positive for COVID-19 and are refusing to stay at home. What are they telling us? It's very unfortunate. You know why they are putting you guys, you know what, they're putting you guys, the media, at risk. You don't add your name, but your picture shows that you may be a health worker. Quickly, this one says parliamentarians. Okay, hang on. This one says parliamentarians and staff testing positive for COVID-19 and refusing to isolate. This is serious and a recipe for disaster. Papani sends that from Kuntunsi satellite. Papani, thanks for sending your message in. And Price doesn't mention his name, says from Price. Okay, says, I'm really surprised. Are the MPs above the law? Why would they even go and isolate themselves? But we normal people will be carried away by so-called law enforcement. Price, thank you for sending that message. And finally, this one says the majority leader should go ahead to mention the names of the affected MPs and stop the politics with it. Yes. So those are some of the messages that you're sending to us. So we'll be looking a bit more into that story as we go along. Well, the Bible Society Ghana is offering psychological, physical, and most importantly, spiritual help to traumatized patients in these challenging times. They're also distributing PPEs to various hospitals and the vulnerable in the society to keep the fight against the pandemic going. This comes at a time when Ghana is experiencing a hike in recorded cases of COVID-19, and many are also exhibiting denial or showing ignorance of the existence of the disease. Joining us via Zoom is the Programs and Church Relations Manager, Reverend Charles Edu Chumesi. Reverend Chumesi, thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much for allowing us to come and contribute.
Right. I want to find out why you decided to go out. Who exactly are you targeting in this outreach? Who exactly is the Bible Society targeting in this outreach?
Thank you very much. The Bible Society is actually targeting not especially people who are affected with COVID, but we are targeting institutions that are helping with the fight against COVID, especially with the health institutions and also the police institution. And even to some extent, we are also looking at engaging the prisons office services so that we can also engage with them on the issue of the fight against the COVID.
So in your engagements with these people, what are your observations so far?
We have observed that the donations comes in very timely because these are items that are very much disposable, and so they receiving these items and other organizations which will also encourage them to do same helps them in their work, because this is critical to their work, and also as they are at the front line of fighting with this COVID, we need to ensure their safety also. So the Bible Society, in sending some of these PPEs, is also contributing to the fight. But then again, we are also looking beyond the PPEs, and the Bible Society's mandate is basically to translate scriptures into the various local languages in Ghana. And so in addition to some of the PPEs that we are giving to the institutions that we have mentioned, we are also giving them Bibles or scripture materials just to encourage the health workers and also to encourage persons who are receiving treatment in some of the COVID centers, so that at least they can also have the assurance of God's word that in the midst of the difficulties and the challenges, God is still with us, and God is still loving, and God is stronger, and that what they are going through, they are not going through alone, but the presence of the Lord is also with them. So that is one area for which we are also contributing. Then the other area has to do with especially when one experiences suffering and one experiences loss. Your hearts are wounded. When hearts are wounded, people need to express them. And in expressing them, they need to be listened to, and also so that you don't create more harms for them. And so the Bible Society, aside the Bibles that we distribute, we also have a resource material called the trauma healing material. And indeed, we are living in a period of trauma. If you are not affected, maybe probably a friend is affected, so you have the trauma. And so we are distributing these materials to the trauma healing materials to some of these institutions, so that at least as they get, they see some of these cases, especially the health workers, they would also be encouraged, and even for the victims also to be encouraged.
I just want you to speak to somebody or people who are living with coronavirus at the moment. A summary of what message is contained in the book on trauma that you talk about. There are two groups that I want you to speak to. First is those who are positive with coronavirus, and the health. Okay, so people who are not health or frontline health workers who are positive, and frontline health workers who were helping to save the situation and ended up being infected. So let's start with the frontline workers. What message can you give them to soothe whatever it is they're going through?
Yeah, they see a lot of the issues, and so we would refer to them as suffering from secondary trauma, and because they are not directly involved with it, but they see it. And so they begin to ask a lot of questions, and some of the questions you cannot have all the answers. So our encouragement to the health workers is that in as much as they are also sacrificing their lives, and in as much as they are giving much more time to help people who are affected, the encouragement is that their labors will not be in vain, and God would always reward them, and that God would always preserve them. And I believe that the Christian community and the other religious community are also praying for them, for their protection and for their preservation. So for the health workers, and even for police and other security agencies, we are just with them, praying that God would keep them safe, even as they are at the exposure of it, that the kind of risk that will come to them will be highly minimized, or certainly not. So that is for the health workers. But for those who are affected, in trauma healing, there are stages that we go through. One has to do with, you ask yourself the question, if God loves me, why do I suffer? And you begin to ask the question about, have I done something? Is it a punishment from God? Cultural nuances begin to set in. But we want to say that when you are affected, and everybody is at risk to it by no fault of yours. And so when you are affected, we want to assure you that in your suffering, the character of God
Reverend Osuchumesi is Church Relations Manager with the Bible Society of Ghana. He seems to have frozen there. But I was taking a message for those of you, if you're watching us, who are living with COVID-19 at the moment. It will soon be over. It won't be for long. It will soon be over. Just keep taking care of yourself and listening to the advice of the health workers. As and when they come, you certainly will be fine. Okay, we've lost him. Let me so most of you are reacting really quickly to the story coming in from Parliament that some members of Parliament and staff have tested positive and are not staying at home. They're going to Parliament. So some of the messages are still coming in. This message says, it's from Takrade. from Gabi, Papa Gabi. He says, so why is it that MPs who have tested positive are being hidden? So those big men all over the world that their names were mentioned, are they not human beings? For example, Papa Uswankoma, Papa from Takrade, sends that. Let's get the wrap-up comments from Reverend Chumesi, who has joined us again. Reverend Chumesi, you can wrap up for me on the points, on your message for those who have tested positive.
To assure them of the presence of the Lord. And also, I believe that in their situation, we have counselors, we have psychologists who would also want to listen to them, because they might have a lot of questions on their mind and they need to be answered with. And so, and then again, for them also to go through, especially for victims of COVID, families who have lost their loved ones, you must also get them to go through the grieving processes, so that it is not like feelings, bad feelings, and hurt feelings are buried. And so all these things goes in to help someone to come out of this situation. So we encourage people who are affected that it is not over. Hope is not lost. We have confidence in God that God can recover and God can heal.
Reverend Chumesi, we'll say a very big thanks to you. I hope that these words have encouraged somebody to know that there is still a better tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Reverend Edu Chumesi is the Church Relation Manager for the Bible Society of Ghana. Like I said, more of you are sending in your messages about what the majority leader said, what is happening in Parliament. So let me just go through a few of them. When will majority tell Ghanaians the truth? This one says. First, the majority leader said that no MP have been affected, and now he's saying different things. Which one do we believe? When will MPP and Nanado tell the truth to Ghanaians from Kotoka Courage in Angloga in Volta region? Well, the majority leader did say at the press conference that the people who tested have had their results communicated to them and that they did not know. He said he did not say that no one tested positive. This one is from, used to say Jesus or Jesus from Takrade. Says, I think the Speaker of Parliament should not allow any member of Parliament who have tested positive to enter the chamber. If they do, they should cause their arrest. Okay, from Takrade. Thank you for your message. This one says, the MP who have tested positive for COVID-19 and interacted with the colleague deserves to be awarded. You know why? If MPs are against him, why then do they pass the CI for compiling the new voters register for masses to be infected? Amwa Elijah from Kusanaba. Okay. And then this message says, what is the majority leader saying? He is the cause of this, so he should not. Okay. James, you sent that from Saba. He said he should not fool us. We are begging the MPs who have tested positive to COVID-19 to self-quarantine because they are putting fear among Ghanaians. They interact with their constituents and we don't know what may happen and one will get infected. Sheriff is sending that message from Salaga. It looks like a lot of you are sending messages from Salaga as well, and a lot of you are interested in what's happening in Parliament. Janet Ejewa from Kumasi says, please, why is it that some of the parliamentarians are not wearing face masks? I don't know, Janet. Sorry, I really wish I could have an answer for you, but unfortunately I don't. Let me take a final message and I'll tell you what my next story is. This one says, when their result came out, the speaker made it clear that those who were positive should stay away. I saw on the news that national service personnel and staff were also asked to do so. It is wickedness on the part of those who have tested positive. Now, this story isn't going away anytime soon, I'm sure. Now, Joy Prime has launched a Mask for All project to give out masks to the public and support the less privileged in society. Joy Prime is the first to have given out branded masks to the public. This was announced by Gladys Seredu, channel executive of Joy Prime, when they launched the Mask for All project.
Approached by the team. I must also say that we were the first to have given out branded masks to the public. And so for us, if we start something like that and a team comes to tell us that we also want to go out and support the less privileged, the vulnerable, and the needy, it was like, yes, our steps are being followed, and so we jumped at it. On Joy Prime at Multimedia as a group, we open our entire multimedia platforms for this campaign to call out to everybody out there that this is a good initiative that we all must support and ensure that this COVID-19 that has bedeviled our economy, bedeviled our social activities, bedeviled our lives. We can't go out as normal. It has changed the times to very extraordinary times for us. When we look forward to extraordinary times being times that we will rejoice, marry together, and say we are successful as individuals, as a country, and of course, as the world at large. And so, anything that we can do to support a cause that would restore lives back to normal is what we aim at supporting. And so for multimedia, when you come to Joy FM, Hits FM, JoyNews, Adum TV, Joy Prime, Asempa, Adum FM, all our platforms, My Joy Online, we are saying that just walk in, just like William earlier mentioned, walk to our front desk and just deliver your mask, and we'll make it available to the people who really, really need it that badly. Aside that, Joy Prime also has embarked on other benevolent causes that I would like to quickly mention here, so everybody knows that it is worth to support good things. And in times like this, you all can also follow up the initiative and do. Giving out to the needy is very important, and especially as we have entered into the rainy season, where flooding is almost like an inevitable situation with us. Let's also, in the midst of giving out masks, support with every other item that can go out there to support the less privileged, the needy, and those who will be victims of a casualty or of a situation that we all cannot really prevent. Let's support the world, let's support Ghana to make it a beautiful place for all of us. Thank you very much.
Gladys Osei, the channel coordinator for Joy Prime. Stay safe out there. Some more messages and I'll go on to my next story. This message still talking about what's happening in Parliament. It looks like a lot of pressure on Parliament right now. The majority leader should go ahead to mention the names of the affected MPs and stop. Okay, Adams, I think I've read this one already. I think you added some more to it. Okay. This message says, yeah, good evening. I think the majority leader is being a hypocrite. Mike from Dodowa. It is now clear, this message says, that the majority leader together with the NPP leadership don't care about Ghanaians at large. The majority just confirmed that he has seen some MPs who have been infected. The majority leader must apologize to Ghanaians and schools must still remain closed. SHS and JHS. Felix from Udumase Krobo. I don't think the majority leader said that. I think what he said was some people who tested positive have had the communication, but they've been communicated to that they are positive, but they keep coming to the Parliament House. Okay, Fuseni Salifu is sending this message from Kaswa Zongo. It says, Honorable Majority Leader has spoken. To me, all those MPs tested positive should be quarantined. And this one says, may I know if MPs are above the law of the state? President and Prime Ministers who have tested positive are open. They've openly exposed to the world. What is wrong with our Ghanaian MPs being exposed to the public that they have COVID-19? And let me take a very final one. It says, when their results came out, Speaker made it clear. We've done this one also already. Okay, so let's move on. Let me tell you about my next story. Former Deputy Works and Housing Minister Samson Ahi is urging President Akufo-Addo to intervene and cause the Finance Minister to release funding for dredging of drains to avert more floods. He said the Finance Minister has not released money to the Works and Housing Ministry to undertake the dredging, leading to the flooding situation. He's also accusing the NPP administration of abandoning drain projects started by the NDC government, and wants that to stop. He wants them to resume work.
Accra flooded 2 days ago. Someone got electrocuted. Could this have been avoided?
Yes, this could have been avoided if we have taken remedial measures to clear the gutters, to silt the gutters. But we didn't do that. Ministry of Works and Housing didn't do that. The government of Nana Akufo-Addo didn't do that. As we speak, even to issue commencement certificate, since last year, they have not even issued commencement certificate to Works and Housing Ministry, let alone considering processing to award contract for the gutters, choke gutters to be desilted. Before we left office, we had started actual work, drainage work with dredge masters at a cost of $51 million. They started some work, and when this government came, they terminated the contract. No money has been released to the ministry for them to also pay the contractor to do actual work. I want to employ the president to have personal interest in what is going on with regards to flooding, because the finance minister has failed us as a country, because he has refused to even release commencement certificate. And you know, the system is said that with that commencement certificate, the ministry, Honorable Atachian sitting there, cannot do anything. And so the president should have personal interest in this flood problems that we have in the country.
Some players in the hospitality industry in Kumasi are expecting business to peak from September despite government relaxing the restrictions. Many of the hotels that opened after the easing of the restrictions say they're experiencing very low patronage a week into business. Majority of the hotels are still closed. My colleague Prince Appiah has been speaking to some stakeholders who project the industry could begin seeing a boost much later this year.
The hospitality industry in Kumasi has been one of the hardest hit in the face of COVID-19. A week after government relaxed the restrictions, hotels like Mechlin, Sunset, Royal Lameta have opened for business in Kumasi. But others, including Golden Tulip Kumasi City, are still closed. So after a week since government relaxed the restrictions on social gathering, which meant that hotels could hold workshops and conferences, here in Ashanti regions, the hotels are still struggling to get people to patronize their services. We've been speaking to Benny Sofair, who is the operations manager for Mechlin Hotel in Kumasi.
Yes, we're expecting people to come in, but it seems still, even though the restrictions have been relaxed, but still it's not forthcoming. Yeah, for now we have a few guests in here. We have about 10 guests for now, but you know, we have 60 rooms, and if you have 10 guests, you're looking at utilities, you're looking at so many things to do, paying your staff and all that. We are hoping that things will pick up. And this is not us. It's a conference hotel, and we are always running programs, but now the conferences are not forthcoming as we expect. We are not running conferences at all. The whole week there's no conference. In a week we could have, I can say we run about 15, 20 conferences, both residential and non-residential. Okay, aside the parties and all that, yes, but it's so you can see how the impact this.
Operators of some of these hotels say they have had to settle their administrative and fixed costs, though they are struggling with patronage.
But when it comes to detergents, you know, we have to. It's something that we are doing consistently. I mean, you know, washing of hands, and you need your liquid, your soap, you need your sanitizers, you need your tissue. These are things we buy frequently, irrespective of the number of people you have.
Some of them are, however, projecting business could pick up from September. Prince Appiah reporting.
And as Prince Appiah reports, let's take a look at climate action. You know that all through the week we've been bringing you what KCIC has been doing about climate change. Here is a report on what they've been doing, rearing fish, if you like, from wastewater, but which is also very healthy to consume.
Is sitting on a time bomb. Ghana is at the mercy of the drastic impact of climate change, unmitigated sunshine, unpredictable rainfall, and depleting soil fertility, among others. How can the country deal with the threat of climate change while solving some of its basic problems? In a series of human-centered stories, we shine a light on some of the most basic innovative ideas that could help bring change and what the Ghana Climate Innovation Center is doing to scale up these ideas.
Access to improved sanitation is a challenge for millions of people in Ghana. About 23 million Ghanaians do not have access to improved sanitation, and 3 million do not have access to safe drinking water. Solutions to this challenge could greatly reduce related diseases and mortality. In most urban cities, domestic wastewater, especially black and grey waters, are discharged into the environment and treated. This wastewater ends up contaminating surface waters and underground water sources. Although many of the metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies have wastewater treatment facilities, just a few of them function.
Wastewater treatment plants of this nature exist in Ghana here. More than 10% of them are, less than 10% of them are working. The rest are not functioning because there is an issue of lack of funds on the part of the district assemblies to maintain and operate these treatment plants.
Makebo Japan is the founder and center director of Trimark Agriculture Center. He has been conducting studies on nutrient recovery from communal wastewater, that is black, grey and kitchen spent water sources, for commercial fish production in Ghana since 2010 till date. He is currently running a pilot business model in recycling wastewater for fish production in Kumasi. The Ghana Climate Change Innovation Center has been providing technical and financial support to Trimark for many years.
Trimark is in the Chapatre district of in the Ashanti region. And within that community, there are a number of outlets in terms of wastewater from their septic, from their wherever, all the wastewater that comes from the community. He is a fish farmer. And ordinarily, people will buy fresh water to breed or brood their fishes. Now he has a technology that would convert the wastewater from the communities and use that wastewater to brood the fish.
Trimark Aquaculture, our business model has been structured such that we reuse the water to generate revenue, grow fish to generate revenue, where the proceeds received from the sales of the fish is channeled back into the maintenance of these treatment plants to address the issue of lack of maintenance for operations of these treatment plants in Ghana.
The design of the treatment plant is such that domestic wastewater from the community is discharged through underground sewage lines into ponds at the site.
The wastewater we are talking about here has to do with wastewater coming from the toilets, from washrooms and from kitchen. And when the wastewater comes in here, they are first of all sent into the first pond, which is anaerobic pond. So as the anaerobic pond settles, it moves again to a second pond, which is called a facultative pond. From the facultative pond, it moves to another facultative pond before it moves to the next maturation and the last maturation pond. So it is in these two maturation ponds, that's the fourth and the fifth maturation ponds, that is where we culture our fish. And fish cultured in the last two maturation ponds are not for consumption, but rather they serve as broodstock, where we harvest, we take the eggs, send them to our on-site hatcheries, where we produce fingerlings.
These are fingerlings cultured here for about 3 months. We had their eggs from the broodstock. The broodstock are really the parent fish that were cultured in the wastewater treatment plants. And then they are about 3 months old. These are the sizes that they get to for us to transfer them into the outside concrete tanks, which receives clean water, which has nothing to do with wastewater. So these are the fingerlings.
So tell me, what happens here? What is this building about? What do you do here?
This is our hatcheries. In the hatcheries here, we actually take the eggs of the female and then the males of the males. Then we hatch them. Then we get the fingerlings, the fryers. So that is actually what we do here. We culture them into a size that we think is desirable, about 40 grams, before we take them outside this building. So that is actually what we do here.
Why is it necessary to culture these fingerlings here at all? Because, well, if you have the parent fish over there in the other pond, why must you go through this other process of hatching them again? Okay,
we have to hatch them here because and culture them here to this standard, because when we take them outside there into the concrete tanks at their tender ages, that is about less than 3 months, the mortality rate is very high, and then we have to culture them here so that they will attain that level, that is the 40 grams, before we can take them out. Yeah.
Talk to me about the societal, cultural perception that people have about fish that is grown from treated wastewater.
When we culture fish in the waste treatment plants, it becomes very difficult due to the cultural perception. So we just devised a way. Why don't we culture the fingerlings, those that we had the eggs from the broodstock from the waste treatment plants. We culture them here, and then they grow to the 40 grams that I told you earlier. We take them outside into a concrete tank that receives clean water, and then we grow them to a table size, that is for consumption. They receive clean water. To break that cultural perception about the fishes are being cultured in the waste treatment plants, that eating fish that are treated in such a manner is, you see, our cultural perception. So we try to break that cultural perception by this time around culturing our fish in a concrete tank that receives a well water that is underground. Very clean. It has nothing to do with the waste treatment plant or its water.
Ghana is a major fish consuming nation with a per capita consumption of over 23 kilograms. Unfortunately, we are also a major fish importing nation, producing only 40% of our needs. Wastewater aquaculture startups like Trimark can make a huge difference, especially considering the fact that a considerable amount of wastewater, including nutrients favorable for fish consumption, translates into substantial production costs.
These are our concrete tanks. Inside these concrete tanks, we culture our fingerlings that were produced inside the hatcheries for about 6 months, where they become ready for consumption. Just last month, we had an order of about 10 kilograms where we process it, and it was sent to America for consumption. Our fishes here are very safe and they are wholesome.
The revenue we generate out of the sales of this fish is channeled back into the maintenance of these treatment plants, which we think that these model is one of the sustainable ways by which we can manage our wastewater successfully in Ghana, by trying to reuse the wastewater to generate revenue for maintenance and operations of the treatment plants.
Yeah, and this is a female.
The Ghana Climate Innovation Center has helped Trimark Aquaculture Center to redesign the treatment plant to accommodate more fish than currently produced. Mark says this will further improve the quality of water and lead to more than 50% increment in fish production.
The existing treatment plant has 5 series of ponds, and the standard of these quality of water in there, it's good for fish production, but it's not really to the level that we expected it to be. It's not at its optimum. So the biodigester here we are talking about, it's a commercial digester. It's a concrete built tanks that is expected to receive the waste first and do treatment in anaerobic processes before the effluent is discharged into the anaerobic pond, for the anaerobic pond to also continue with its function as an anaerobic pond. In that effect, we are expecting the whole treatment plants, the ponds, to perform more efficiently by getting the best out of the whole resource.
Any business we support, we take them from a certain stage, bring them to the limelight, and other funders see the light and inject more money into the businesses. We supported Trimark with about $40,000. Now there is an institution, because of confidentiality, there's an institution that is supporting him with $100,000 to expand this. And these are success stories that are worth mentioning so that people will see the kind of work that Ghana Climate Innovation Center is doing.
Besides numerous partners we've gotten to support Trimark in our activities, partners like Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly, International Water Management Institute, and Aqua for All in the Netherlands, and also Waste Enterprises. GCIC has played a very key role in our business model.
GCIC is a pioneering business incubator with a unique focus of developing SME ventures and entrepreneurs in Ghana's green economy. Their mission is to develop and support an exceptional set of transformational ventures and entrepreneurs who are pioneering adaptive and mitigating solutions for climate change issues in Ghana. They focus on 5 key economic sectors: energy efficiency and renewable energy, solar power, climate smart agriculture, domestic waste management, water management, and purification.
Ghana Climate Innovation Center with that success story there. And that's it for this week. I hope you had a very good one. I had. Let's do this again next week. There's more news at myjoyonline.com. And when you do log on, click on the stories, share it with your friends, let them be updated. My name is Gifty Andopia. It's a pleasure coming your way.